All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We're back, Aron Snyder and I. It's been a while.
Yes. Well, we see each other all the time, but we haven't done a podcast.
Yeah, we've had actually a few people, just so people know, Gritty Bowmen's a little seasonal.
Yes.
Right? So the topics we cover, this year we hit a lot of trade shows and got a lot of shows recorded at those events.
And then you get hate mail because people get tired of them.
Yeah, they do. And so for those who have a show recorded that sat down and took the time, that show will come out in the next month or two, but it might take a while. In the meantime, Aron and I are getting back on the horn for recording shows, about topics that between the two of us that
tech tips, fitness, nutrition.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kind of the backpacking
Clothing.
101 kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But today, since it's been a while since we've done a podcast together, we're going to try to get one out every week going forward. What we're going to do is answer questions.
The first one I think we should get out of the gate right off the bat is Brian is wearing Prana Zion pants. I think that's charcoal color. I have Fjallraven Abiskos or Kebs. I can't remember.
We do get this question a lot: is what pants is Aron wearing? In just about all our YouTube videos, podcast posts.
I have.
Let's just get the list out right now. What pants do you wear, Aron?
So, just to get it out, in case anybody goes, Sitka Timberlines. Those are which you can pretty much tell. A couple of cardio videos and then a bunch in the last. They've got the knee pads, the padded butt. Generally, below 50 degrees in bad weather, I'll have those on. When I go to shows, I have Fjallravens on. That's the dual colored pant that's basically cotton, no stretch to it. Looks like I'm ready to go shoot a pheasant or something. When I'm hiking, Fjallraven, Abisko or Abisko Lites, Kuhl Renegades, or Prana Zions. Now, I will say, before you go out and buy Prana Zions, the cut has changed a bit, and they've hit the what do you want to call it? They look, without getting myself in trouble, they're a skinny jean type of a pant now. They have the skinny jean look now. They're not like they were before.
Are you sure? Because I just got some a couple weeks ago, and
Did you buy them on sale?
Mm-hmm.
That's why. The new ones are the full price ones.
Mm-hmm.
They're a new cut.
Well, you know that Prana has like 4 different cuts now.
Well, if they on the Zion, the new Zion cut,
the Zion cut
is much tighter than the old one.
Hmm.
So make sure you try them on before, because I just got a set from Prana, from my hookup there that he get, the bro deal, and they went back, and he's like, "Dude, we changed the cut." So there is multiple Prana pants, but that Zion cut now is not like the old one.
All right, so we're gonna try to next question, Aron. Got some questions. This is from Steve Moore, and he asked about
Hi, Steve.
The sight. How do we like the new AccuTouch sight, and how does it compare to sights you've used in the past, like Spot Hogg, like the Option 4 sight that I used?
So I would say on the Option sight, it's going to be hard to. I'm not going to talk about the Option sight. You can, because I wasn't a fan of the Option sight for what I did. Yeah. If you take the Truball sight in comparison to the Spot Hogg, which I would say is the most equivalent, the Truball sight, whether it be the AccuTouch or their standard pin sight, it's easier to use as far as adjustments go. On the AccuTouch, there's actually, as you dial the windage down, it'll lock into place. You have these little movers. So basically what I'm saying is if you have a 5-pin sight and your 60-yard or your 5th pin is your rover, meaning it goes from 60 to 70 to 80 to 90 to 100, as you dial your dial to those yardages, you can make it to where it locks into place with the AccuTouch from Truball. The one thing I would say with the AccuTouch that the pins are not as durable as a Truball pin or as a Spot Hogg pin. The pins on the Spot Hogg are more durable. The adjustment system on the Truball, I would say, is more easier adjustable. There's a through rod basically that adjusts the windage. but you just kind of push it through. It's a rod. It gets out of the way of the knob. You twist the knob in a very redneck explanation, and then you push that back, and that keeps it from keeps it from moving. The Truball is also lighter. So I would say the only my get myself in trouble spirit of candor, which you may have to edit, is from the pin back. The Truball beats the Spot Hogg in a few different ways, but the pins on the Spot Hogg beat the Truball. That's my no BS assessment, and we've been using them a bunch, and I like them both. Mm-hmm. I think you're good either way. Obviously, Truball backed us, which we like.
Supports our Gritty Bowmen podcast.
Yeah, they supported us, and they've been cool to deal with too. The thing cool with Truball is they make that HT in the sweet spot back tension release, which the sweet spot for your case has been a game changer.
Yep.
And I'm sure this is going to come up, so I'll just get it out now. People, anytime we talk about something we used in the past, something new. Basically, with Brian, you had asked me, because I'm more of a technical guy when it comes to the sights, comparison to Brian, just because I screw around with stuff way too much. And I said, hey, we want to use Spot Hogg or Truball. Either of those sights are really good. That Accu touch you stole from me, or I let you take, however you want to look at it.
And I've used a bunch of sights, not just the ones we mentioned. I mean, I've been shooting bows for more than 10 years.
Oh, yeah, I just geek out on them more is all it really boils down to.
But I will say that, and this is not just me, because we're working with Truball, and the fact is, this is my favorite sight I've ever used.
When I knew you would like it because of how it adjusts. Mm-hmm. It is just simpler to adjust. So again, so people understand that the Spot Hogg makes a great sight. I've used them forever. They're amazing sights. When you go to buy a sight, generally what you're going to get on a negative side with Spot Hogg is it's heavy. It's not as easy to adjust as the Truball. Obviously, it's going to be more durable if it's heavier. It's built like a tank.
Correct.
So it's pros and cons, but that Accu touch is, the adjustments on their 7-pin side and the Accu touch are pretty cool. So basically, on you have a dovetail bar, and on the Truball, both you on the Spot Hogg and the Truball, you can adjust that depending upon which sight you get.
Like my old True Glow didn't quite have that option,
and we got,
but it was $30 at Cabela's.
Yeah,
so
we got 10,000 pins on the ones we're using now, so it's pretty nice, and you can get 10,000 pins on just about any site now. But yeah, that is not. That's the first time you'd been using 19 before.
Yeah, so though I'm just super impressed with this site. I really like it. I don't think you can go wrong. So anyway, moving on. The other thing is the releases, and we've done a couple videos on those. So we've had questions about the release. One of them you covered a little bit yesterday, but we'll do it again here, guys. So explain the difference between a hinge and a trigger.
Well, we'll break it down into 3 quick categories. Okay. When I say hinge, that basically, or I'll say back tension, because I just consider a hinge a back tension. A hinge, you basically have a hook. This is a very redneck way of explaining it. That hooks onto your D-loop, and it works on a cam system, meaning there's one piece of metal, and it's locking into a half moon cam. And it basically is rolling off of that cam as you roll your hand. Now, when you talk about back tension release, any release can be used as a back tension, but typically most people, when they are using a hinge, say back tension. Not everybody.
Basically, the principle is that it doesn't have a trigger for your finger.
Right, or your thumb.
And it's fired based on the back tension that you're putting.
Yeah, whether you're rotating it or whether you're, executing back tension, not the, some of that is, kind of potato.
And so lately we've been using the sweet spot.
You have, and I've been using the HT.
Mm-hmm.
Now the sweet spot was something new. I think Truball actually, they're the first ones I ever knew to use many years ago in early 2000s. It is a hinge style with a safety. So rather than with mine, when you rotate the hinge and it clicks, and then shortly after click it fires, you go back to your anchor point with the sweet spot, and then you hit a safety, which locks the head into place, which now starts your engagement of the hinge or cam system.
So basically, you've seen, some of you guys have been shooting for a while, and we get these comments or emails like, I punched myself in the face using a back tension release or hinge release.
Yeah, the sweet spot fixes that for the most part.
Right. So that's the issue with yours, is you hook on with your HT.
Yep.
That thing couldn't go off at any time.
Well, I have a clicker.
If it twists.
Yeah, the clicker helps. But even through, if you're hurting when you're pulling back.
Dude, the clicker doesn't help. It just tells you, hey, it's about to go off.
Now, I've gotten so accustomed to a clicker, I can actually click at quarter draw and keep going. But I've shot years. I've shot a back tension. Now, the biggest question I get about this, it isn't really with the sweet spot or HT. What I'm getting more is, how do you hunt with one and speed up the shot? That's simple, and I've hunted with one a bunch. You just pull through faster. Now, you'll get guys saying, hey, one guy commented, Brian, you're rotating your hand. In my opinion, until you get comfortable with a hinge-style release, rotation of the hand is completely fine, because you're not going to be able to execute, one, if you're working on a cam system and you don't know when you're close, unless you have perfection from the distance that cam is as far as rotating, you're not going to be able to perform back tension. But what it does do, if you're rotating your hand to make it fire, you're doing everything correctly as far as aiming, you're still letting the pin float. You're not freaking out.
Yeah, and here's the thing, just from my see, I'm kind of your regular Joe.
Yeah, you just started shooting.
I'm not some archery shooter. Okay, I'm a regular Joe. Been shooting a bow for a long time with a trigger release, or wrist rocket.
What most people are asking the question about are just like you. You've always just shot a wrist rocket.
So from my perspective, the difference here is I know exactly when the trigger is going to go off virtually every time. Mm-hmm. Even when I'm using a release where the trigger is set pretty stiff, and so I've locked in and I'm trying to be surprised by that release, like I don't know exactly when the arrow is going to go off. It's very easy for me with the trigger, to just make it go.
Right.
Whereas with this back tension release, and I've got it at full draw, as I rotate like you're describing,
it keeps you honest.
It keeps me honest. Yeah, I aim and it teaches me to aim better, because I don't quite know when the arrow is going to go off, and it also prevents me from obsessing about the pin meeting the target.
Yeah.
Because with a trigger, it's very tempting to get the pin on the dot, and then once they line up, pull.
Yeah.
It's just tempting to do that. With this, it's old habit now. Like when I'm at full draw with the sweet spot, I'm just holding in the general vicinity. Mm-hmm. The pin's floating, and I don't know when it's going to go off. And when it goes off, it goes off.
Yeah.
Well, that's better aiming, and I end up with really tight groups like that.
Right. And the one thing that I don't get, like, I don't pester you too much when you shoot until you ask. The reason why is you're executing it halfway, pretty dang close to good. Like, Can you get better? Yes, so can I. Everyone can. But you're not reefing it off. Like, talk about Henry Ferguson. He won't mind. He's fixed his target panic. But at one time, shooting a hinge style release and punching it does no good, right? It doesn't, just because you have the hinge in your hand, and he would just reef it off like violently. Now he's gotten over that. Now keep in mind, he could still kick the crap out of just about anyone while reefing it off. But the proper execution is obviously a smooth, consistent, release. Now, what I was leading up to with this is the animal. Something's moving. You have to, you just pull through faster. I mean, it's as simple as it sounds. I just go faster.
And I still haven't been able to execute a good shot while trying to make it go off more deliberately.
Right.
But I've seen you do it. You can just flump with the release, because you've practiced it so long. It's very easy for you to.
Phil Mendoza good at it too. He's super. And what I do, and you'll do this soon, is you and it's a mind thing, right? Mm-hmm. Is I'll just lock an arrow and I'll look at the wall at 40 or whatever, and I'll just pick a spot, and literally I get back and just pretend like it's an animal and execute it as fast as I can without punching it. That's all I do. I just pull my hand. The back tension is out the window of, let's flex your back. That's gone. I'm just rotating my hand quickly.
What I'm finding right now as I shoot the sweet spot that, like you said, earlier I'm rotating my hand when I first started using it about a month ago or so.
You're not now. It's clean.
And now I actually relax my pointer finger. I relax my hand a little bit at the same time I'm using back tension. So I've actually part of my that release is actually a combination of relaxing my hand while still pinching and pulling through my shoulders.
Right. And a good example, which I guess if you split firewood, you can take the most muscle-bound guy in the world and have him try and split firewood. And you can take a 150-pound skinny dude that split firewood since birth. He's going to crush the muscle-bound guy, whether the muscle-bound guy benches 600 pounds or not, because he split firewood his whole life. He knows how to put his back into it, his butt. It's the same thing with a back tension. When you fired one your whole life, you already went through the trials and tribulations of all the problems to where it's just second nature. And I've shot one because I got target panic. Yeah. I've shot one forever, and the firewood splitting is not the best analogy. What I'm getting at is just keep shooting one. Don't worry about shooting one fast. Don't worry about what's going to happen when an animal gets in front of you. Perfect the shot first, which is what you're doing. And in the next couple of weeks, you'll have it. I mean, you've come leaps and bounds because first you were like, when it clicked, it looked like you had a seizure. Now it's nothing. You just fire.
I did jump. Whenever I heard it click, I jumped. And then when the arrow went off, I jumped because they were both a surprise.
Well, in 2005, they're all blending together. Whatever year, I shot that big bear in Idaho with the back tension. I shot a couple elk. One was a pretty good distance away on a frontal shot, which I get bashed for normally. And I mean, Colton, he watched me. I just pull, boom. And I mean, I pinwheeled on it on a frontal. But again, I've shot one a lot. I don't get the target like where I would just reef through with an animal in front of me.
Well, when you were just talking about the guy chopping wood and everything, there were a few comments about how I rotated my hand a lot, and so I wasn't using back tension and so forth.
That irritates me, by the way. You just started to.
Yeah, I've been doing it like a week or two.
Maybe
and that's
a week.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, but when I'm doing that before, there's some truth in that. Like I'm just getting comfortable with it in my hand. And like you said, the guy chopping wood all those years, he's starting to figure out when to put his butt into it, his back, and all of that.
Yeah, you're
building up.
Yep, you're building blocks.
And now when I'm back there at full draw, what I realized about 3 weeks ago is my hand was
dead tight.
Just dead tight on the release, and I was focused on just that back tension.
Yeah.
So I just pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling and pulling through the back. And what I felt like I was ripping the bow in half and like trying to rip it apart.
Yeah.
And it just wouldn't go off. Wouldn't go off.
The one thing I found with you is you do not like to be told what to do and anything in life.
Same with you.
Oh yeah, and we've talked about this before. If someone briefly mentions to me something, it sticks. When someone comes over and says, "Do this," it does not stick. One of the reasons why Joel Turner and I didn't get along in the beginning, he just came up and like, "Hey, dude, you suck." I'm like, "Whatever," and I'll probably never listen to him again. So with you, I just kind of subtly, "Hey, kind of loosen your hand," and then it just fell into place. Yep. Where now, because
it's so hard. Like in the moment, I was so focused on that, I'm gripping it. Now my fingers are so relaxed as I'm pulling with the back tension, and when it goes off, it just feels awesome.
Oh yeah, and you again, like I prefer I don't have, not that I'm a world champion coach, but I would rather a guy rotate it some and perform everything else in the body correctly, knowing that he's the building blocks, because pretty soon he'll go from rotating and then he'll rotate a little bit less and then he'll loosen his hand and everything will fall. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yeah.
And I know for me learning how to use one, I rotated it the entire time with my hand, just bringing it back. And then I got to where, all right, no more rotation, not as much rotation. Then I got to the point where I could just lay there and just drop them. And you see, I'm pretty good. That it's not like I can just walk up to you and say, "Hey, here's a back tension. Be perfect." Right. It just doesn't happen.
You just get familiar with it and don't obsess over it. And the other thing, the two things that came up with the question of using it in a hunting situation. One is a number of people said, "I don't want to use a release like that because I'll lose it."
Right.
I've been out hunting and I've set it down because it's not connected by a wrist sling,
yep.
And then it's gone. So I'm just using triggers. which we covered that the other day.
Yep. They make a V-lock. Truball does.
Truball makes a V-lock where the sweet spot can be tied up to your wrist sling, so it's always there.
And back in the day, it was a Stanislavski was it. That's the only one that was out. I just used to drill a hole in mine and tie 550 cord through it.
You're redneck. Genius redneck. So when,
I had it on
when
my
that
pinky
came up the other day, you were like, "Well, that's easy to fix. You tie a rope to it and tie it to your body."
Yeah, literally, that's what I did. I had 550 cord and just rednecked it on there. Now, obviously, the buckle system, works
Ingenuity
better.
and design.
But I always keep a backup. I'm so bad.
Yeah.
I have a primary, secondary, and tertiary or whatever. I've got a third too, but I like the fact that that wrist strap, what I'll do if I'm doing any manual labor, I'll twist it around and then tuck it in my sleeve on my forearm on the top.
Yep.
And it's out of the way, and I can still put up the tent or whatever, and then I just pop it out and twist it back around.
Right.
Because with most, it fits in that sleeve and it stays out of the way. Hanging tree stand's another thing.
Yep. So the second part that people were concerned about was, it going off when you didn't want it to go off.
That can happen.
So with the sweet spot, though, you kind of fix that. So for people listening that don't know about this, and it's very nice for me because I use the HT, which is just a clicker that tells you, hey, I'm about to go off, but there's no safety on it.
Mm-hmm.
And with the sweet spot, I can lock it, go to full draw, and I know it's not going to go off.
Yep.
It's not going to go off as long as the safety is on.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I'm settling into the shot and I'm ready, I click that safety off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going and going and going. And then there are times where I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to shoot yet.
Yeah,
and I click the safety back on,
mm-hmm.
and I let it down. That was the hardest thing for me is when I went to let down with the HT.
Oh, it's rough.
There's no safety, and so half the time, it's just better for me to shoot the arrow.
Oh,
and in a hunting situation, I don't want to do that.
Yeah, and believe me, when I started, I had arrows all over Bear Creek Lake State Park because I didn't have someone initially helping me with the back tension. And yeah, it was. I mean, I had bloody nose, whatever. I figured it out. It just took a while. But the one thing I would say is, if you're going to go to a back tension before we move to the next subject, in my opinion, you need total commitment. You have got to, you got to give up the trigger, hide it. You know what I mean? Give it away, sell it. You have got to commit to the back tension. Now, am I saying you're going to hunt with it? It's going to have to be something like I did with the stick bow. You're going to have to commit to hunting with it, shooting with it, and do it all the time. Now, I can shoot 18 releases in one day. It doesn't affect me, but I've also been shooting every release made for the last 20 years or whatever it was. But commit to it. You know what I mean? You gotta make a solid effort.
For me, now that I'm shooting a hinge release, a back tension release, I highly recommend it to everybody.
Yep. Yeah, it's a game changer. It definitely changed. You always have a puncher's chance. It's the same thing from boxing and it is in archery. You can see a puncher come on fire and just smoke guys. But you never see a guy that operates a back tension correctly. You hardly ever see them shoot. They don't have bad days because they're consistent. Now, if it's windy, there's variables. But I mean, when's the last time where you've seen me shoot? Well, get the recurve out of the way. You've seen me shoot horrible with that. But generally, I'm pretty consistent. There's some days better than others with the back tension, but that's because it keeps you honest, which takes a lot of variables out, like punching the trigger and yanking your arm out of the way and everything else. So
yeah. Next question. Shooting with one eye closed or both open?
Both open, without a doubt, gun or bow. To me, anyway, most of that military, if you don't have your left eye open, you can't see all the rest of your surroundings. And so that's a big one for me. Now, every now and then I'll blink my left eye, or I'll blink both of them, or I'll squint my left eye down depending on the lighting situations. But I shoot with both eyes open for the biggest thing is I want to have total peripheral vision. And you see better with both eyes than you do with one eye.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not an optometrist, but I know if I close one eye, I can't read that sign. I open the other one, I can read private parking now.
Yeah.
Common sense, so I keep them both open. Now, I've had guys tell me I can't do it. I'm pretty sure we said the world was, Earth was flat at one point. We would never make it to the moon. You can do it, but it does. If you're used to closing it, you almost have to tape it open because it's It's hard to stop.
I leave both eyes open, but the left one is it's like
you squint a little.
Squinted just a little.
Yep.
Just a little. It's like that reminder, like, okay, left eye, you're second to the right eye, you know.
Unless you're left eye dominant shooting right hand,
right?
Then you gotta close it. There's no way around it.
But yeah, I shoot with both eyes open. This one, Kifaru packs. A good college friend, hunting buddy of mine, and I are planning our second ever elk hunting trip. And this time we are choosing to do a DIY tag over-the-counter archery hunt in Colorado. We will have access to horses for packing out our prospective kills, but both of us want to be prepared to hike out of a base camp and set up a spy camp if needed. I have hunted whitetail several years in Oklahoma and heavily relied upon the use of my Badlands 2200 pack. But I'm ready to upgrade my gear and move to a reliable frame pack. A Kifaru pack is my first choice, but I'm a little overwhelmed by all the options that the company offers. I'm 5'8", 250 pounds, with roughly a 48 to 50 inch chest and a 40 to 42 waist.
So you're a little guy. Right?
I'm looking for a pack that is modular enough in design to fit me the best now and as I slim down as we get closer to September. Also, I need one that will suit me well for DIY hunts in southern Colorado this year and other hunting locations in Wyoming and Arizona in the future. What are your recommendations?
So with a guy built like you, probably a 24-inch frame, I'm assuming, and then you're going to need a large belt, but that's easy. The belt swap out in like 30 seconds, so as you slim down, we can go to a medium. And then as far as pack size, anybody saying like they're going to spike camp out, in his case, his bag, he'll have like a wide sleeping bag, but 35 to 4,500 cubic inches if you're spiking out for a couple nights. So like a Woodsman with a lid, maybe a Mountain Warrior, a Tahr. And then don't worry about the sizing portion of it, because with us, we can swap out the belt or the shoulder straps or adjust the shoulder straps or whatever. As far as the overwhelming amount of questions, that's pretty common with us. Just email our customer service. Email me, Aron, ARON, @kifaru.net. Give us a call at the shop, 303-278-9155, or you can call me on my cell, which is 720-937-1418, and we can knock it out in a 5-minute conversation of what you'll need. It's not as overwhelming as you think once you kind of learn the system.
Okay. Here's another question. Battery. I'm coming to Colorado in 2018 over-the-counter elk hunt. I'm looking to get a Canon 80D for both pics and vid, as we are spy camping for the most part. I'm not bothered about weight. So my question is, how do you charge a DSLR in the mountains? Or do you just take multiple batteries?
I just take multiple batteries personally. You, on the other hand,
I take multiple batteries.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, you've got lots of more stuff to charge.
Yeah. So for photography, if you're just taking pics,
I get 8 to 1,200 off one battery.
Exactly. You can just bring a few batteries. With the video, you're burning through batteries a lot. I mean, it's just a different
plus
animal.
The GoPros. Yeah.
So. But recently I've switched from Canon to Sony, which Aron and I are going to do another podcast here in the next week or so on video and photography.
And that Sony eats batteries like a rat eats cheese.
Yes. And so on the Sony, I just ended up buying, I don't know, I think I've got like 10 batteries now.
That's what I had when I had a
They're
Sony.
not big, and they're pretty lightweight, and I just get a battery grip because I don't want to have to swap batteries as often, so it'll take 2 batteries in the battery grip.
Yep.
And I run the Sony like that. But lately, there's been a game changer for me. I'm running the Sonys off of my Dark Energy charger.
Yep.
Which is pretty sweet. So Dark Energy makes their Poseidon charger, and it'll run my Sony. It won't run my Canon, but it'll run my Sony. So that's another good reason to switch. My Sony runs, I'll do 4K, and we'll get into the cameras later on another podcast. But
because I was packing in a new Trent, which is a different charger. I know those I'd usually they kind of crap out once a year. Pretty much every charger craps out once a year that I've used.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why we do like Dark Energy, they haven't crapped out on us yet. But if you're just going to take photos, just take a couple, 3 batteries. If you're using like a Canon, the 80D, you're going to get I'd say 8 to 1,200 photos on it. It's a lot of photos. So don't stress over that. If you're going to take more photos than that, or you're going to video, then you're going to want to bring a backup battery charger.
The other thing with the dark energy, if you're interested in it, it's $85 for the Poseidon if you use the Gritty coupon, Gritty15 when you buy it. So if you go to darkenergy.com, you can get that charger there. Dude, we've used a lot of different chargers.
Yeah.
I use it to power the GoPro. We used it in Alabama to run both the Sony and the GoPro while it's just filming in the tree stand for hours.
I've fried one, but I didn't fry the charger. I broke the connection point because I was too lazy to unplug the cord, and I mashed the living crap out of the cord and bent the port where it goes in. I bent that outer portion over, and so then you kind of got to flex the little tongue thing on the. It still charges. It's just it's user error, but that's pretty good compared to going through a nutrient every year.
And I use it to run the audio equipment for podcasts, especially at the shows. So anyway, that's that one. How to approach animals after you have spotted them. How loud can you be in certain ranges to game? Do you avoid different kinds of vegetation? So this guy's pretty new to hunting.
After 100 yards, you better be real quiet. When you get to, I'd say 40, you got to hit mouse level, and then you hit like 30 and in, you're talking like flea fart level quiet. And it depends on how much the animals have been hunted, what you're hunting, what time of year it is. As far as the best case scenario, don't walk on anything loud. I hate to make it that simple, but if you've got a choice of grass or rocks, walk on grass. If you need, go down to your socks if you're on rocks. I mean, it's not like I'm the sneakiest. I can be sneaky. Brian is way more constant sneaky than I am, or I'd say you're more cognizant of your speed. I get going and, you got to throw rocks at me. But that last distance, I can be quiet. But from Alberta, the Alberta deer to Colorado deer, Alberta deer, much more twitchy from the ones we hunted in Colorado. And so that distance for me was 50, where I really started to freak out with Alberta mule deer on the stock, where with Colorado deer, there's a 15 to 20 yard variance in there. I mean, you need to be quiet. I'm talking flea fart quiet, but I definitely worried a hell of a lot more about Alberta deer. So as far as approaching, just be as quiet as you humanly can be. And if the wind is right, you're never going to be in a bad spot.
And I think it depends on the season. When it's the rut,
you get away with a lot.
And when it comes to elk, you can be much noisier with elk. They're noisy too.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and maybe I took the question wrong on that. I'm envisioning a bull bedded and approaching it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're feeding, you can do whatever. I mean, not whatever you want.
It's really species specific, right? I mean, certain ones are jumpier and pay more attention to those sounds. I find elk less so.
Yeah, you can about run through the woods blowing a cow call if they're in the rut. Not run, but you can. They just think you're an elk cow call.
I think the best advice is experience. You kind of just have to get out there and do it. And in lieu of having enough knowledge to know how loud you can be, just be as quiet as you can.
Yeah, yep. And you'll learn real quick. You'll have a story.
That didn't work.
Yeah, and you hear those stories a lot every year from guys. Man, I got close last year. I got to 50 yards. You can pretty much guarantee they either screwed up their calling, it's movement, or noise, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that if you think you're being slow, if you're new to this and you think you're being slow, you're not. Go even twice as slow as that.
Yeah, I'm not new to it, and I still have to do that.
Any new person I usually bring hunting is like, they think they're being sneaky when they're really not. So whatever you think is sneaky, go even sneakier.
Yeah.
But that's after you've spotted it and you know where it's at. Unless you're still hunting, and that's a different question altogether. But this guy sounds like, hey, I spotted it. How you can pretty much walk without being too quiet up to 100 yards.
Yeah, pretty.
And then from that point on,
unless it's just flea fart, no wind,
right.
There's always, I mean, and don't ever take advice from me about still hunting.
All right, next subject, Nalgene and Steri-Pin. First off, I just want to say, okay, love the podcast. I had a question about what bottles y'all are using in the backcountry. Are y'all using the 32 ounce or 48 ounce with the SteriPen? I thought it was the 48 ounce, but now that I purchased the SteriPen, I see that it can only purify 1 liter at a time.
32. Yeah.
Kind of a weird question, but just want to double check to see if y'all had any chance, if you all chanced it and it worked out.
No, I haven't chanced the SteriPen. It's pretty cut and dry. It says don't do it. It won't work. I use just the Nalgene, and then I have a bladder rolled up in my pack for the larger amounts, and then I just use the same with both of us. We both use just a 32 ounce standard Nalgene.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We just use the Nalgene bottle, and then we just dump that into a bladder.
Unless I remembered pills and drops, which I generally, it's a 50-50 chance.
Which we'll do that. Like if once we base camp, you'll fill up a big bladder in the creek, drop some pills in it, and it'll be good to go in an hour.
I had a 10 liter last year. That's what we used, and that was kind of our camp water. So,
mm-hmm. Yeah. But otherwise, we're just using the SteriPen and the it tastes good. Mountain water. You don't have to worry about the diarrhea.
Brian didn't know I was pissing in the water above him. That was the flavor.
We should mention the SteriPen they're not all created equal.
No, I use the Classic.
The Classic. And so I went and bought the Classic. We've had a number of people, including me, suffer breakdowns with the camp version or the little green one.
All I knew is the other two I tried. One's a Freedom, I think, and one's something else fried on me. So the Classic, that one, I've had 2 generations of it. I just never let me down.
It's their original.
One of their. Well, it's the newest version of their original, and it's just I've never had a problem with it.
That's what I got after that first season, after that first elk hunt, and used it all season.
It was a depressing day, laying over the dead SteriPen.
That's right. I was really sad that day, and I was angry at SteriPen, but we're good now. The Classic. Get the Classic. Okay, Aaron, what question you got?
I had some questions on arrow weight.
Okay.
Bracket it down real quick. Go ahead.
Go ahead and ask me.
Yeah. Well, and actually that was a part of it was, you're shooting 70 and I have a 76 and an 86. Anyway, what arrow do you need to kill an elk? Well, that's not exactly a straight answer, because if you shoot cut on contact broadheads, you can shoot less weight. If you shoot some mechanicals, you need to shoot more weight. But some guys, there's some special people on Archery Talk that'll shoot one elk with a 350 grain arrow and everything went perfect. You can kill an elk with a 350 grain arrow, no doubt, not a problem. I cater to the heavier side of things. I try to shoot. If I'm shooting a 70-pound bow, I want to be around 460 to 500 grains. If I'm shooting an 80-pound bow, I'm up in that 550-plus range. But it all depends on if you're shooting mechanicals or fixed blades, obviously. And then there's a happy medium between speed, momentum, kinetic energy, all that. But I would say you want to try to be at 450 grains is a good number to go off of for elk. With a, that's with fixed or mechanical, and obviously the speed depends on that too. And then, if you shoot like an NAP kill zone, which is a devastating broadhead, it sucks up momentum like a champ. So you're going to want to maybe shoot a little more kinetic energy with a broadhead like that, where you talk about the grave digger, you've got that cut on contact head. You can get away with a little bit less momentum, less arrow weight with that, and still get a good result. So I wouldn't stress over anything too much. I would just say try to shoot 425 to 475 grains, at 250 to 300 feet per second or whatever. There's not really, it's where you put the arrow is the most important thing more than the arrow weight, but you definitely don't want to be under arrowed for sure. I think we said yours are 430, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The ones we got Brian going are 430 grains. You're going to shoot that cut on contact grave digger.
It should be plenty.
Yeah, I'm not freaked out. You're shooting 272 feet a second, I think. Is that what you were at?
Yep.
Yeah.
265, I think.
Oh, yeah, we were going back and forth on it. No, my arrows, that arrow you got from me is faster.
Yeah.
Yep, you were right. So I wouldn't stress over it too much, but, you don't want to be flinging toothpicks at it either. So
I like how mine are flying in the wind. I like how they're getting broadhead flight.
And you're shooting that setup really, really well. So Brian could go to 80, but your accuracy will go downhill. So I would have an accurate 70-pound bow with that setup of yours that you're just driving tacks with it than a guy shooting 80 that can't hit anything.
And we've talked about this before. Like I'm not the best static hold athlete. Like I'm much more of a dynamic movement athlete. If it's speed and power, I like that. Drawing the bow is not the problem. Mm-hmm. It's holding the bow back, that kind of thing. And I just have better accuracy at lower poundage. And I feel great. Like it feels fast.
Yeah.
It feels great. I feel, you talk to these women, like Suzanne's got her bow set up and she's at 42 pounds or something. And here I am complaining because I'm only drawing 70.
Well, and I was shooting a stick last year. So it's like, right. and I do get, that was another question. We're talking about weight and arrow weight or whatever. What poundage should you shoot? That is personal preference. And I would just say shoot the highest poundage you're comfortable with. Mm-hmm. Meaning you can hold back for a while. You can shoot comfortably at any distance. You can shoot repeated arrows. In my case, that number's closer to 100 than it would be from I'm shooting 86 or 85 out of my one bow from torquing with the cables. I can shoot that with a back tension well, and so I shoot that. I don't need to shoot that. It's not needed for elk. I'm not hunting squirrels with it and all the other goofy comments I get. But I've got it there if I need it, and I shoot it accurately. For most people, I'd say 70 pounds is more than enough and not to worry about it.
I think it's nice to have a higher poundage bow, like 80 pounds, so 70 feels light.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if you have the luxury of having a couple of bows, having one at higher poundage that you shoot and then having one you can drop down, just seems like a smart thing to do.
And I know guys that do that a lot where they have two bows, a primary and an alternate, and they'll hunt antelope, mule deer with the 70-pounder, and they'll hunt elk or moose or whatever with the 80-pounder, so they've got a couple to
But in
work
reality, I mean, 60 pounds is going to do an amazing job. 50 pounds, a lot of these women are shooting at 45 pounds.
Especially with a cut-on contact broadhead.
Yeah. Next question?
Yeah.
All right, so Trey Everett, he asks, how do you kill elk? Okay, here's the question. I've been watching you and Aaron for more than a year now, and I have found the gritty bowman to be helpful. My buddy, his dad, and myself went on our first elk hunt this past September. We bought over-the-counter tags at Walmart in Colorado, found some public land, hiked in 8 miles, then found some elk. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
We got close, and my buddy's dad, at 69 years old, drew on a nice 6x6, but couldn't get a shot. It was awesome, but we didn't really know how to hunt them. It was early in the season, so do we call, hunt water? I was wondering if you two could share how to get it done early in the season like that. I am sure you get requests for this all the time. Okay, I really enjoy listening. Okay, got his question.
Well, I hate sitting water, so my suggestion would not be sitting water, just because it's super boring. And it's different depending upon, that's a pretty broad question, but early season I hunt super high. So I just watch where they're coming out of the tree line and then see where that is, wait for the wind to go right, get over as close as I can before I think I'm going to scare them, mildly cow call, they come over and generally shoot them. That does not work for big bulls unless you just get lucky. But if you're just trying to shoot a elk, if you get close enough, whether it's early season or not, and you, not to oversimplify it, if you just mildly cow call and you're within 100 yards of elk, something's going to come over and look at you and figure out what's going on. The other option, obviously, when I say early season, depending upon how early, whether it's pre-rut, things like that, if you're in the timber and it's early season and they're not calling much, you're kind of SOL in some ways if they're not calling a whole lot, because you have to be you can get elk to make noise early season. It's harder to get them come in, bulls specifically. Raghorns will come in and take a look, but the biggest thing, watch your wind, try not to do anything overly stupid, get as close as you can and learn how to call. After that, talk to Corey Jacobson, because he is much better at calling than I am. I rely heavily on glassing, sneaking, and, common sense, more or less. Mm-hmm. But it's not like I'm dropping giant elk every year either. I'm just shooting a bull.
Right. Colorado definitely can leave you spoiled. It's a lot different than some of the other states I've hunted. And granted, I've only seen a subset of where we went last year in Colorado.
That's not too good of a way to judge.
But I have heard from other people who have hunted here, they get into a lot of elk. It seems like Colorado has a lot of elk. So
piles, yeah.
One of the ways, so where Aron doesn't rely on calling as much, I have actually, a lot early season. And one of the ways that I like to hunt early season, especially because they're not making a lot of noise, and if it's thick, where Aron took me last year, it was a bit thick, so you couldn't glass them up like you would in like Nevada or Arizona or something like that, or in the Plains area. It was pretty, and they weren't out at 10,000 feet, at least not in the beginning, so you couldn't glass them up on these open, above tree line.
Yeah.
So when it's thick like that, and they're not bugling back at you, what I found is I like if you go find Jim Horn,
the cold calling.
Yeah. The cold calling technique, Jim Horn's early season calling techniques. We've been killing elk like that for years, where we just go out and we just kind of sound like a herd of elk. We're breaking branches. You do this calling sequence, lots of cows.
But keep in mind, you have to know how to call. Is the big one. And that's what I was trying to with earlier. If you don't know how to call, out of luck. You got to be able to call a little bit.
And that's where, like, years ago, I got the Jim Horn DVD. I met Jim Horn at a seminar he did.
Yeah.
One of the very first times I went and bought an elk call that day, and then I went to this seminar. Mm-hmm. Before that, I never called elk. I just bought in stock and just kind of bumbled around to find them.
Yeah.
This time I was like, okay, I'm going to call. And, but if you can learn, and I just practiced in the car. I get in the car and there's no one there to hear me, right? Cause I'm in the car and I got, some sounds playing on the radio, on the stereo. And I just practiced in the car on my way to work, on the way home from work for months.
Yeah.
And at first, I'm not making any recognizable sounds. I'm just making noise. The goal is just to get it to make noise. It doesn't matter if it sounds like an elk or anything else. And slowly, you'll start to see what works and what doesn't, or how to blow it. But once you get pretty good, it doesn't take that much. You don't have to sound exactly like Corey Jacobson to pull this off.
As long as you sound like kind of an elk, that's the thing. It's a big deal. Well, when I say that, it's also the pitch. Like you and I cold called this year a lot.
Every day.
And, but hunting with guys that don't know how to call, early season cold calling, I'm a mild cold caller, not in the unit we were in, but in over the counter units. I'm just herd talk. Hey, and then a calf, you're like, mom, just small bugles. But if you think about it, if you're trying to pick up chicks and you walk into a bar and you walk up to her and you're like, hey, do you want to get naked? As loud as you can. You're going to be like, oh my Lanta. And it's not too much different from elk, right? And that's what I've noticed. Guys will get on an estrus call, blow in on August 27th till the end of time.
Well,
heavily pressured elk generally don't like that.
Yeah. Well, what I found, and this is in Oregon where there's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
And this just shows to show that there's lots of different ways to do it.
Oh, yeah.
We've gone, because all I need is one elk.
Mm-hmm.
I just need one to do what I want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done it out of desperation because we haven't seen an elk. So we're like, for the next 4 days, all we're going to do is blind call.
Yeah.
A cold call.
It's extremely effective. I mean, I like cold calling. It's just you do need to be prepared for a lot of sitting.
It's a lot of guessing, too, because what you're hoping for is when that elk comes walking in, that you're in position for it when it comes in.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, of course, they're going to circle downwind of you, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're the cold caller, you want the shooter out in front of you a ways, downwind of you, to intercept the elk as they sneak around behind. Except for the other, 90% of the time when they don't go downwind of you to get your wind, and they just come straight at the caller. So it's just a gamble, but yes, you can call elk in early season even though they're not talking.
Yeah. The one thing you need to be prepared, I'd say, is you need to sit for. We've sat for a couple hours before, but half hour to an hour for 45 minutes for sure. Last year they're coming in about 45 minutes.
45 minutes is that magic window. So if I start calling at 7 a.m., I don't really want to move from my spot until 7:45 or 8 o'clock. And that's just from experience. I found that
they take a while.
They sit in him and haw, I think.
Well, last year was one of the first times I got to be the guy shooting, not the guy calling.
Yeah.
And, when you're... Well, that one, I don't know, whatever it was, 5x6 that came in, I watched it for 10 minutes before it was even remotely close to getting shot. And he wasn't taking lots of steps, and you were a long ways behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can, if, they got good vision. If you're not paying attention, that elk was coming through the aspens, and I was catching eyeballs. And he was just taking a couple steps and looking, a couple steps from, 150 yards out from me. And then that bull in Idaho, there wasn't much hiding between he and I, but he came from 800 yards away. He came, that took forever. So they come from a long way, and they generally, they don't always come real fast. So you need to pay attention. And I will say what I'm talking about is Colorado. I've had better luck glassing in the high country, walking, finding where they're feeding and then go over and shooting them than I have in the timber cold calling in Colorado. But I have the luxury of being at 11,500 or 11,000 feet.
Yeah.
Compared to like with Oregon, you're cold calling. You don't have choice.
It really does depend on the terrain and what the country provides. I would prefer to glass and spot and stalk every single time.
Yeah. Hunting dog
early season, because they're not amped up enough to get them pissed off to charge in on you.
Yeah.
Once they herd up later in the season, first of all, they're bugling in the morning anyway, and in the evenings and kind of throughout the day. So you can even shock gobble them, sit there just bugle in the afternoon at like 1 o'clock, and all of a sudden, they'll call back at least one time just because they can't help it. And so that gives you, but early season is a different animal. A lot of times they aren't talking. Depends on the unit, depends where you're at, but most of the time they aren't.
They may be talking the first day until all the hunters hit,
just
and
totally
then they stop talking.
Right.
That happens too. A lot of it, though, you said it best, just get out there and go hunting. You're going to figure it out on your own. Most shit you're going to forget about in the time of need anyway, and you're going to be like, what did Corey say, or what did Brian say, or Aaron say, and you're going to forget and screw it up, and then you're going to remember what you screwed up for the next time.
Okay.
All right.
I was going to say, on early season elk, another way to do it is early season. Like if you're scouting a month ahead of time, you can throw up some game cameras, see what trails they're using them, and you until the hunters roll in, you have a good chance on killing something on opening day.
Yeah, you have to. Most hunters are successful because of their spots. More, when I say most, I'll say most. They earned a good spot. They found a good spot. They're, you know what I mean? And when that spot gets screwed up, they're good hunters because they go find another good spot that has lots of elk, and then they kill them there. It is a lot more difficult to show up in an area blind and just go kill an elk. And a lot of times it's more luck than it is skill that first time until you find a good spot, or hard work just walking around where you finally run into them. The thing is, once you run into them, in Colorado specifically, almost everybody runs into elk. It's the common sense you use after running into them that gets it on the ground, right? That's where the luck comes into play, meaning I've talked to guys like, we were walking, we were getting ready to set up camp, and then there was actually a herd and a cow, and I went over there and then I shot it. And I'm like, oh, that's cool that happened, but it was more happenstance. And then the next year he went out and he learned a little bit, it's a trial and error process. So, Alberta, all right, that's something new for both of us, what we expected and what happened. It was a 3-day learning curve, but it was a hell of a learning curve.
Right.
And that was one of the things like, okay, mistake number one, don't peek your eyeballs over the hill, right? Like there was things that you learn quickly, where with elk, a lot of guys, whitetail hunters, they make a mistake of not drawing their bow. They're used to whitetails. Like you can't get away, where I've had bulls looking at me at 20 yards, drawn back, and they run about 20 more and look back, and then I shoot them.
Yep.
Well, that ain't happening with a whitetail, or at least not in my experience. So, this is stuff you pick up over time.
Yep. Cool. Okay. Next question. I hope that answered their question. It's kind of a broad one on early season elk. I mean, everybody has a technique and
if
an
you're
opinion.
in Arizona, you're on a water hole.
Yeah.
So
Water hole. I mean, if you're coming like this guy did from the East Coast, showing up, buying an elk tag over the counter and just hitting the Colorado mountains.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. I think we kind of covered that.
Yeah.
I actually like to bring game cameras.
Yeah.
Like when I hit POW, it's thick. When I hit the Oregon coast, maybe I'm only there 5 or 6 days. Still, day one, if I see a heavy trail, I throw the camera up. I want to see what's in the area, and I want to get a general idea of what time of day they're going through a certain spot. And that's how I killed my big bear in POW last time I was there. I hung like 7 game cameras up on all these different trails, and then I figured out where this bear was going every couple days to this spot. And I didn't check it till almost 2 days before before our week was up, but it gave me good intel, and I went and hunted that trail. I knew not to use 6 other trails because I had cameras.
Yep.
So it certainly helps with scouting. People can get a little start to get upset over using technology and stuff like that, which has come up here and there. But for me, I have no ethical problem throwing up a game camera to help me scout, given I have limited resources and time to spend in the woods, and especially before I started doing gritty Bowmen.
Yeah, it's really bad then. And
just to show up on POW, hang up 7 cameras, and then kind of figure out after 5 days what's going on these trails that I think were pretty good, really helped me narrow it down.
Yeah.
Stabilizers. New question from Ben from Golden, Colorado. I've recently found your podcast, super useful information. I'm setting up a new bow and have never really paid close, detailed attention to the components that I add to it in the past. The podcast, thank you for the podcast regarding arrows. I'm going to give the Black Eagles a try and start building my own arrows. My question is with regards to stabilizers. Is there a big difference? I elk hunt and I am typically back in 4 to 7 miles deep into the mountains. So weight and size play a role.
Well, if weight and size play a role, then what I'm about to talk about, just minimize everything I'm about to talk about. Me personally, when I get a bow, you want to make sure and get your sight level, make sure your sight's level. And then I put my quiver on and hang the bow up like a plumb bob. I put my front stabilizer on and a kicker, meaning an offset coming off the back or whatever.
Back bar.
Yeah, back bar.
And that's where you've got a stabilizer sticking out the front of your bow and one coming off the back.
Or I just offset it off the front of the bow to the left because I'm right-handed, to offset the weight. And there's multiple different options, but I level it to where, meaning I adjust the back bar or the offset like a plumb bob, hanging my whole bow until the bow is naturally level, meaning my offset is offsetting the weight of the quiver and the sight and the rest and everything else in arrows. And then once that is like, textbook level with everything on, then I adjust it. I torque it from there as far as how I torque the bow or
you draw it.
When I'm at full draw. Yeah. And then I modify it from there to what's most comfortable. Is it needed? If you're not shooting overly far distances, it's probably not needed as much. Just make sure your sight is level. If you're going to shooting farther distances, I think it's a lot more important. And it also dampens the bow, which is important. It makes the bow quieter. So it does make a difference. But if you've been successful without a stabilizer or out an offset or a kicker, who am I to say to put one on? I will occasionally take a farther shot, and I like the fact of how quick it levels up, and for me, and how steady I hold with that system I have, and I take the weight penalty.
From my experience, I've never run a back bar until this year, and in the past, I used a really long stabilizer with a lot of weight on it to try to help me shoot better, smoother. With this back bar on it and with the setup, it's true. I can come to full draw and everything just pops up into place. I'm not messing with my bubble. I'm not trying to fix my bow, the angle of my bow or anything. For me, the way I'm shooting right now with the stabilizers on there, is maybe it's mental. And if it's purely psychological, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Because I feel more confident in my shot than I ever have in the past.
Yeah.
So the weight, how much weight is it adding that stabilizer?
It depends on which, in your case, I think you're adding 4.5. No, you've got 6.5 ounces on there on that kicker, I think. So,
but it's a carbon bow, so it's light already.
Right. It's very arguable, and believe me, I get made fun of by guys that don't use a stabilizer, but they take shots inside of 30 yards. On my case, I'm taking shots inside of 80 yards, and so it's much more important. And I'm not all the time, but I practice out to 80 yards frequently, and so I want that bow to be as stable and as level as quickly as possible when I draw back on an animal, so I just take the weight penalty. I think everyone should at least try one.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't like it, take it off.
Well, that's for me too. Like I was shooting without it, and then I put it on there, and I've been shooting with it, and I'm like, yeah, it makes me feel like I'm a good shot.
It's like aftermarket insoles. Didn't use them forever. Didn't need them. Then I used aftermarket insoles, and I've had them in my boots ever since.
Yeah.
Some people don't need them. For me personally, it helps. But yeah, you got tough feet. I don't think you wear aftermarket ones, right?
I do. Once I started using them,
yeah.
I use the green super feet.
Yeah, it makes a difference, and you don't know what difference it'll make until you try it, so it's worth a try.
I went years without them,
yeah,
and did fine. But once I got it, yeah, the stabilizer that you're using is a Hot Rods.
It's their Western system from AAE is what they call it, and they're I think all their stabilizers are Hot Rods, but it's the Western Hunter system. Yep. That's what we're both using. In fact, I hooked a couple of my buddies up with them, and we're going to do a giveaway with one of the sets. It's nice with that gripper. I didn't use the bracket they sent with it. You are using it, or you were.
I'm using. You've got a gripper which allows you to change the angle a little more.
But it's heavier, right? So everybody gets paid, right? So it is heavier to have that. But I don't mind a little bit heavier bow, even packing it and everything else, just because it is very stable.
A few years ago, there was an article that came out, and I remember it going everywhere, where they were saying that a stabilizer didn't improve in the accuracy of your shot. And then later, they've come out and said, well, no, that wasn't right. It does improve your accuracy of your shot. But I just use a little common sense. I took some brain cells that rubbed together, and I was like, okay, if all the competitive archers are using them, they must help.
Well,
and they're not just using, like,
if it's
token
the same
stabilizers.
Article I was thinking about, they shot it out of a shooting machine. You can't compare that to a human, because when you're at full draw with the shooting machine, right? You crank it back. The shooting machine, the machine is solid as a rock. There is no heartbeat. There's no movement. There's no hand. There's no torque or anything like that. A stabilizer is a non-issue. So what I think that article was about is once the bow goes off out of the shooting machine, it didn't make a difference. Well, a shooting machine's, not a human, right? There's a lot that goes on in the human body after, before, and during the shot that comes into play, and that's where the stabilization comes into play. The machine is the machine, and so when you draw it back, you can adjust the bow level with the machine, and it's going to repeat that. Where with a human, you're up on you got one leg up higher, one leg lower, you're off camber, your toes are higher, because you're on a hillside, you're squatting. Way different. So that's where it helps.
This is my first time using it. You've been using them for years. When I put that back bar on there, and my quiver and everything, and I go to full draw, it's when you were helping me set it up, I just pull it up. I'm used to always having to torque the bow, to get the bubble level on my sight, and I just kind of torque. I just twist it a little bit with my hand, and that's how I shot every time. Well, every time I did that, it put
unneeded tension.
I was using unneeded tension through my arm to hold it and to torque it.
Yeah.
Now when I go to full draw and I have those weights on there, it just, my hands, I'm super relaxed because the bow just levels on its own. So I don't know, man. I wouldn't go back now that I've used it.
It's hard not to use them. Now some people just throw them on their bow and they don't know why. You do want to make sure.
And don't set them up right.
Yeah, don't set them up right. And you do want to set them up where they're, obviously being beneficial. But
I'm more about the back bar now than I am about the weight out the front, because I find that the weight on my other bow helped me hold it steadier, just because the bow was a little heavier.
Yeah.
But I always had to torque it. Yeah. Now, because of the back bar or the kicker or whatever,
and a kicker, yeah,
I can just hold it there, and I like it a lot.
It's definitely in my opinion, a better system for total accuracy. But again, I take everything a bit overboard personally with archery, where from my arrows on up. But I'm also, my goal is to be shooting at 100 yards at paper plate or smaller size groups consistently. You can't just, kind of hinge shit together and expect that to happen. You'd have to put some effort forward, and that's including your stabilization system.
Yeah. So. All right. That's it, folks. We'll be hitting these every now and then going forward. We got so many questions that Aaron and I are getting all the time, and we can't answer them individually. It's gotten too high. So
yeah, and it's almost nap time.
It is. Aaron's fading.
I am fading. Actually, I got up at 2.
Dude, you sent me a text this morning at 3:40 and said, "Make sure you get up early today."
I was at the gym. I got up at 2. I don't know. So I got up at 2 and went to the gym, and then I got in here, started paperwork at like 4:45, and we knocked out a couple videos for 3 videos for Kifaru, and then we came in here and did that sawtooth one. So it's been a productive day, but I'm going to go home and take a productive nap.
All right.
Stay gritty.
Stay gritty.